Hello, everybody. It's great to see you again. Come on in. We've got some stuff to talk about. Let me know you're alive in the chat. Daniel Durham, greetings to you too, sir. Good to be back on the live stream again. Feels like it's been a while. Yeah, it has been, because I didn't do a live stream last Friday. All right. Let me fade that down. Yeah, so last Friday I was in California for my grandmother's funeral. So that's why I didn't broadcast on Friday. But it was nice to be back in California. It was nice, even under this. I mean, if you take away the circumstances as to why I was there, it was really nice to be back in my home state. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that happened. You know, I didn't think I'd be doing another live stream that's mainly about Afghanistan, but the way things have been going, it's worth talking about. But I will be talking about a topic other than Afghanistan after the first two. So let me go ahead and get rid of this. But welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over personality. And if you want to support my work, please like, share, and subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and we'll be good to go. Hit that share button too. That'll help me as well. Let's get some more people watching this, and the liking will help me with the algorithms. Also, if you want to further support my work, you can sign up for my online community at afreshperspective.locals.com. Only $5 a month, and you'll get premium content that other people don't get. I'm going to make myself put up a bunch of stuff, since I haven't in a while, on my paid community. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'll be sharing that on Twitter. Also, if you want to do a one-time donation to support my work, you can do so here. The CashApp and Venmo. Also, the links are in the show notes. PayPal as well. Anything and everything counts. And also, you can do super chats while this live stream is going on. So if you have something burning that you want to say, or a question that you want me to answer, hit me with the super chat. That all helps. So but before I go forward, also would want to remind you that LibertyNation.com is a proud sponsor of A Fresh Perspective. Check out LibertyNation.com for all of your conservatarian news, original articles and analysis, videos, podcasts, Liberty Nation Radio, and their signature TV program, The Conservative 5, all on LibertyNation.com. Conservative news where truth matters. So let's talk about Afghanistan again. There's a couple issues I want to address here. And the first thing that I want to talk about is how the media has been covering this whole fiasco over the past 10 to 15 days or so. And what's a little bit surprising is that they're not doing what they normally do. And it's kind of making me wonder what's going on here. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has noticed this. As a matter of fact, I know I'm not, because I spoke with one of my colleagues on Liberty Nation TV, Graham Noble, and I'm also going to be quoting from his article. And we talked about this, and we talked about how the media isn't doing the usual shtick where they just defend Biden no matter what he does, right? This is not normal under a Democratic administration. I assure you, for those who kind of got into politics more recently, this is not how the media acts when it's a Democratic president, although they should. But as we know, that in a lot of ways, the mainstream establishment media tends to be more favorable towards Democratic presidents. It doesn't mean that they never criticize a Democratic president, but it's not the same. If Biden had an R next to his name, he'd be getting a lot more criticism over the past 8 months that he's been in office. It's just the way it works. Most of the mainstream media outlets are run and owned by people who lean towards the left. And just as right-wing media tends to go harder on a Democratic president and go easier on a Republican president. But in this instance, there's something weird happening here. But also, before I even get into that, I also want to point out Biden's approach to the media. And it's funny, I put out a tweet today about the speech that he gave at the White House, and I pointed out that he walked away afterwards without answering any questions, just like he did the last time he talked about Afghanistan. Now, most people can acknowledge that he should have stayed to answer some questions. It's one thing to do that once, but to talk about Afghanistan again and you don't want to answer a single question, you are the commander-in-chief of the military. You are over the entire military, and this whole situation is going down in Afghanistan, and you are running from questions about it. That's what we call a bitch move. And again, I want to defend Biden on this. I do. I really want to defend Biden on what he's doing here, because again, I'm going to give him credit. He's getting us out of Afghanistan. We can't take that away from him. He's doing a good thing there. But this is not how America envisioned this going. Even people who like Biden can still are even acknowledging how he's messing up here. Our allies in the United Kingdom and elsewhere are acknowledging that he is not handling this very well. And I think there might be a couple reasons for that. And I'll touch on that a little bit. I may or may not talk about it again on Friday, but there's some issues going on here as far as the way Joe Biden manages his staff. To give you a hint, sounds like it's very similar to the way Vice President Kamala Harris does, because you saw those reports come out about how she created a toxic work environment in her office. And again, this wasn't from a conservative source. This is from Politico, right? They are to the left, very much so. Now, here's what Graham Noble pointed out as far as how Biden interacts with the media, or how he, in his case, doesn't interact with the media. He writes, quote, as CNN notes, former presidents Barack Obama and Donald Trump had given 133 and 50 media interviews, respectively, at this point during their presidencies. It should be noted, in fairness to the latter, that he made countless unplanned appearances before reporters. Rarely did Trump board Marine One without first answering a barrage of questions, doing the same when he arrived at his destination. In contrast, Biden has only granted 9 interviews after 8 months of being in office, just 9. And Graham's right about Trump. They may not be counting this, but if you notice, anytime he was about to get on Air Force One or get on a helicopter, he was answering questions. Trump loves being in front of the camera. We know that about him, right? And Obama, same thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the chief executive should be accessible to the press. So Obama and Trump were both fine with that. Biden, not so much. And I mean, the reason why is kind of obvious, right? I mean, I'm sure his handlers are afraid of him saying something stupid or showing his cognitive impairment or whatever it is that's going on with him. I'm not like others. I don't think that he's senile. I don't think that he's that far yet. But I mean, he is obviously experiencing some type of cognitive issues. And it's interesting when I asked that, I didn't ask a question, when I pointed that out on Twitter that he avoided questions. You know, you always get people who are like, well, he doesn't always have to answer questions, or they'll do the whole but Trump thing. Well, Trump actually answered questions. He didn't avoid the media. Biden is. And on this, and I get he doesn't need to have a press conference over every single issue. But if you're talking about Afghanistan, this what's going on is a milestone in American history. This will be in history books, how we got out of Afghanistan. And right now it's looking like it's going to be worse than it was when we left Vietnam. Yeah, you damn well better answer some questions. He's not going to be able to avoid this forever, but it's amazing that this would even be defensible. And I'm going to give the media some credit on this issue. I'm just talking about just this one issue here. They are doing their jobs. They are being critical of this administration. They are allowing guests or interviewing guests who aren't really happy with the way he's handling things. There are only a few outlets, MSNBC is one of them, that is actually trying to defend the way he's handled this drawdown of troops. And even on MSNBC, they have had people on who have criticized him for gaslighting us about what's going on with the withdrawal. And it's weird. I'm just going to say it. It's weird. Like, they are criticizing him in a way that had me thinking, wait, is Trump still in office? Oh, wait, no, it is Biden. And they're criticizing him. Now, I will say this. They are not going after Biden nearly as hard as they would go after Trump if he were still in office. You guys know what they would be saying. And I don't like to do the whole, well, what if it was Trump thing? But sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes you got to point it out, Because if Trump was in office, there would be wall-to-wall coverage 24/7 about how horrible this withdrawal effort is going. They'd be like, oh, he's going to get our allies killed. He's a horrible person. He's probably trying to get them killed on purpose because they're brown people and he hates everybody brown. Like, you know what they would be saying. They're not doing all that with Biden, but I will still give them credit because they are reporting critically on him. I've seen pieces in the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and they are very obviously going after him for the way he's handling this. Now, there was another, first I'm going to quote from the article again. And he says, quote, when it comes to reporting Afghanistan, actually, I'll leave that part alone. But still, yeah, because that wasn't what I thought it was. That's okay. But anyway, it's very interesting. And when I interviewed Graham Noble on Liberty Nation TV, he kind of came to the same conclusion that I did. The reason why the press is actually being critical of Joe Biden is because there is absolutely no way to spin this whole thing, right? Like when it comes to the migrant crisis or the inflation issue or the radical agenda that he has on guns and other aspects, and even his immigration policy, there are ways to spin that in a way that allows them to promote their agenda and protect him. When it comes to this withdrawal effort, that ain't going to happen. There is absolutely no way to justify how he's handling this. I mean, for starters, he was given intelligence as to how rapidly the Taliban would be taking over the country when we started drawing down our troops. They might not have given an exact day because that'd be impossible, but they told him this is a risk. They are probably going to take over pretty quickly, and he ignored them. And I read a report, and I even wrote an article about it, about how senior White House staffers were afraid to give opinions on this whole thing that contradicted President Biden and his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan. They wanted to raise objections to this whole thing about saying, oh, well, the Taliban won't be that big of an issue. They want to say, no, we need to start getting these people out before we remove all of our troops. We need to go in and get our Afghan allies out of there. We need to get our civilians out of there, our American civilians, and we need to start drawing that down and then remove the troops, because if we don't, we could end up in a really bad situation. But they were afraid to voice their disagreements because apparently Biden doesn't like to listen to people that disagree with him. He's got a lot of yes men around him. And I won't be surprised if there are more reports that come out from members of his administration saying that it's hard to disagree with him because when he wants to do something, he just wants to do it. Trump kind of has that quality too, right? I mean, if we're being honest, Trump had a lot of yes men around him. Although I will say I have seen reports of people being able to disagree with him without fear of reprisal, but the fact still remains. Like sometimes leaders they don't want people to disagree with them, and they will surround themselves with people who will withhold their opinions if they know that it won't be popular among the rest of management. Vice President Kamala Harris has received that same criticism. So this could have gone a totally different way. And it didn't. And not only did he not listen to people saying that this Taliban takeover was going to happen sooner rather than later, he waited to even start getting people out. And on top of that, he's not even willing to try to extend the deadline. So you may, and I'll actually get to this in the next segment here, but it's bad. I'll just suffice to say it's bad. That's why the media isn't trying to cover for him, because they can't. So I think on this issue, they're going to go after him hard. They're going to give him a spanking. They're going to spank him a little bit. Don't get used to it, though. Do not get used to this, because this is not the media turning over a new leaf. This isn't them finally realizing that they should be engaging in journalism instead of activism. They're going to go back to business as usual as soon, the very second that this whole thing blows over. They're going to go back to being his ministry of propaganda, because that is the media apparatus that we have right now. What do you guys think? I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Krenes, thank you for the super chat. $7.77. I like it. You says, thanks for intelligent fire conversations. I enjoy your content. I am too old for low IQ and ignorant spin on important topics we face today. Good, then you're in the right place, because I don't do that. You're not going to agree with everything that I say, but you'll know that when I'm saying it, I mean what I say. So I'm not a team sports mentality. I'm not rah Republican or whatever. I happen to be on the right, but that doesn't mean I won't call out bullshit on the right too. So yeah. Megan Cox, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate you. You are amazing. It is one thing if your advice information is not acted on, but it is another thing if you are afraid to even voice your opinion. Then that's absolutely right. Here's the thing: if it had just been one person who was afraid, then I would say, well, maybe that's his problem, and that's not Biden's issue. And Biden may not even know that he's intimidating people into not voicing their opinions. Maybe he thinks that people just agree with him. I don't know. But the reports I saw, there were multiple senior staffers who talked to the press or talked to people who talked to the press and told them about this. So there's an issue there. That's a serious issue. I mean, if you're running any organization, it's a bad thing to only have people who will say yes to you. You need people around you who will check you when you're making the wrong decision, and people who will check you for your own good because they want you to succeed, not just because they just like checking people. You need people around you who are able to say, no, Mr. President, that ain't going to work. That ain't it, Chief. We got to do something different. And there should be debate in that circle so that you can come to the best decision that you can come to. I mean, it doesn't guarantee that all of your decisions are going to be sound, but if everybody's saying yes to everything you say, then you are guaranteed to make bad decisions. It's impossible to avoid it because no one person can always make the right decision. So this is an area that is concerning, really, because this probably goes beyond Afghanistan. This probably applies to other issues where people might want to say something, hey, I don't agree with that course of action, or maybe we should try something different. And they feel like they'll just be shut down. And nobody wants to feel that way. And again, like you said, Daniel, it's one thing if you give the advice and they just don't follow it, but it's another when you're even afraid to even bring it up. That's an issue. Rachel D, yes, you did finally make a live. I appreciate you being here. Do you honestly think Biden is making the decision? Okay. Now, I know it's popular to say that Biden's not doing anything, that it's all his team. And I do think that there's some truth to that. But I do think he is making these decisions. I don't think he's making them by himself. Just like, no president makes every decision by themselves. You have advisors for a reason. I do think that he has more handlers than most presidents would have due to his cognitive issues. But yeah, I do think that he's definitely making these decisions, or at least a key part of the decision-making process. He kind of has to be, right? So let's go on to the next thing here. I want to talk about what's going to happen after this deadline passes. So you may or may not already know that the deadline that was set by the Biden administration to have all of our troops out of Afghanistan, we have 0 troops in Afghanistan. The deadline for that was the end of August. Now, if you remember, first he said that we'll be out of there by September 11th. And then he moved up the timetable and said, we're going to be out by the end of August, by August 31st. Now, that was before he realized that he was going to make really stupid decisions that created this whole snafu that we've got going on over there right now. And what's difficult about this is that there was talk of perhaps extending that deadline. There were reports about that last week, a few days ago, that maybe we might need to extend the deadline, because here's what became clear. What became clear: there is absolutely no way in hell we're going to get everybody out of Afghanistan by the end of this month. That became clear last week, maybe even before that. And as it stands today, it's only a few days from now, right? Only like 7 days. There are thousands of people in Afghanistan who we would need to get out. I'm just talking about Americans right now. I'm not even addressing our Afghan allies. I'm going to get to that in a second. But just Americans, there are thousands and thousands of people there that we need to get out. Now a lot of them have been removed from the situation, and they are working to get them all out. They're doing a lot of different flights. But again, this should have been done before. He shouldn't have waited until we were drawing down and the Taliban started getting more power, especially since the Biden wasn't going to have the military do anything to slow the Taliban's progress. We just let them do it. I get that the Afghan army laid down their weapons. I wasn't mad at Biden for bringing that up. A lot of people criticize him for that. I defended him because what he said is right. We can't continue a war to fight for people who won't fight for themselves. I know there's more nuance to it, right? There were reports or rumblings that they weren't getting from us what we were supposed to be giving them or what have you, or they didn't have the resources. But the bottom line is they laid down. Not all of them. There are some that are still fighting. I think 3 territories were taken back from the Taliban. I don't know if that'll last, but still, there are people fighting back. But for the most part, they laid it down and gave up. And now a lot of the commanders were paid by the Taliban to give up. That's why their takeover was less violent than it could have been. It wasn't because, the Taliban didn't want violence. They don't care about violence. They just wanted an easier way back to power. But here's the thing. As far as that deadline goes, when there were reports that the Biden administration was considering extending that, the Taliban came out and said, no, bruh. Y'all need to get out. That's what the Taliban said. They said, we will not extend the deadline. And one of their spokespeople said that August 31st deadline is a red line. Remember the last time we heard that term? Remember the last time that term was popular? Yeah, it was back during the Obama administration when he tried to set a red line for, was it Syria? Yeah, for Syria's government to stop doing something or what have you, and then he didn't end up enforcing it. Now Taliban is saying that's a red line. They said that if we keep troops in there after the 31st, it would provoke a reaction. They didn't say what that reaction would be, but we could have a hostage situation. There could be hostilities, what have you, or they could just be bluffing. But we'll probably never know because Biden rolled over and said, okay, fine. Yeah, no, we're going to stick with the 31st deadline. We're not going to consider an extension. Even though our allies, at the G7 meeting that happened earlier today, United Kingdom, France, and whoever else is in that category, they were saying, no, you need to get an extension so you can have more time to get people out of there. And that's where I'm talking about our Afghan allies. Because I think we'll probably be able to, hopefully we'll be able to get all the American civilians out of there who want to get out of there. At this point, I can't even say that that's the case. I think some people are going to be left behind, which is going to create a horrible situation because they will be in danger. And as a fact, the New York Times had a report saying that a lot of our Afghan allies are being denied access to the planes to get out so that Americans can go on those planes and get out. And which that we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to make sure we take care of our citizens first. That's the way every country operates. However, these people, the Afghan allies, they were interpreters. They did all kinds of things for the U.S. military because they wanted to help us. They wanted to help us change their country. They put their lives on the line. And we put them in that situation under the promise that, hey, we'll take care of you. We've done this, like I said on my last broadcast, we do this. This is what we do. We'll have allies and encourage them to rise up against their government, say that we're going to help them. And then we say, oh, just kidding. I guess we're not going to help. This is what America does. I'm not saying we do it all the time, but we've done it. We did it in Cuba. We've done it. We did it with the Kurds in Syria. We've done it in other areas. And now Biden is going to leave them high and dry. Here's the thing. We're the United States of America. The Taliban doesn't tell us what to do. I don't care if we're in their country or not. You don't tell us what to do. We can crush you we can crush you again if we want. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of money and lives, but you won't last if we wanted to wipe you from the face of the earth, or at least get you to an area where you can't do much. We've done it before. It should be up to us when the deadline is. But Biden's rolling over, and here's what's going to happen. And what I'm about to say, I hate every word of it. But people are going to die because of this. People are going to die because our administration was too feckless to keep its promise to our allies. It sends a message, doesn't it? It sends a message to the rest of the world. It sends a message to our friends and to our enemies. What it says is that the United States does not care about its commitment to its allies. And I get that this drawdown was going to be messy no matter what. Like I said on the last broadcast, the Taliban was always going to take back over. This was always going to be messy, but there were things that we could have done to mitigate a lot of that. There were a lot of things that we could have done, things that were suggested to the administration, and they just didn't listen. And this is going to get worse, especially if we abandon American civilians there and we don't get them out and the Taliban gets a hold of them. It ain't going to be pretty. We can't have a hostage situation like what we experienced in Iran. But for the Afghans who helped us, it's going to be worse. The Taliban is already trying to root them out. They're already going door to door looking for them. I saw somebody post on Twitter that he knows an interpreter who's having to move from house to house every night to make sure that the Taliban doesn't fight them. Because if they find them, they will capture them, and these people will be executed. And a lot of these people will be executed publicly and in the most disgusting manner possible to send a message, because this is what the Taliban does. They behead, they behead people, and they do it to send a message to others who might stand up against them. These people are in this situation because of us. And the fact that we're going to abandon them. And by the way, if you watch President Biden's speech, he reaffirmed this. He said, no, we're leaving by August 31st. And whoever's left behind, that's what was insinuated. He didn't say that right out. But this is going to be a horrible stain on our legacy. Like I said, we all wanted the war to end, but we didn't want it to end like this. And we're going to have to do a lot of damage control as far as our allies go to reassure them that we will fulfill our commitments. But at this point, I couldn't blame them for not trusting us. I mean, Vice President Kamala Harris was over in Singapore and trying to reassure them that, hey, we've got your back. This is especially important in Asia. What does Taiwan think of this? How does this affect them? Like, we always said that we backed them up, but now Taiwan has got to be giving us the side eye a little bit. Like, well, will the U.S. really be there for us if China, invades or something like that? And I'm not saying that we need to get involved militarily. I'm just saying if we make a commitment, if we have allies, this is a really, really bad look. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to reverse this. I mean, for all the complaining they did about Trump when it came to foreign policy and international affairs, and a lot of that criticism was warranted, but not all of this. Trump didn't do anything like this, as far as I know. And it is going to be a blight on our legacy. It's going to be a blight on our history. This could have gone way different. And we had what we needed to prevent this. And we chose not to do it. I shouldn't say we. Our administration did. Our leaders did. They failed the American people, and they failed our allies. They failed. I mean, there's no way around it. Yes, it's good that Biden got our troops out. Again, I can't take that away from him, and I will continue to praise him for that. But the way he did it marred the whole thing. It left a black mark on it. So what do you guys think? Okay. Endgame, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Can you speak on the impact of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, provided the Senate passes it? I don't know enough about that to where I'd feel comfortable going into detail on it. I know a little bit about it. And that's going to be back in the conversation again in about 5 minutes, probably. They've got the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They've also got the For the People Act. And there are some issues there. It's basically the For the People Act is a federal takeover of elections. I'm not sure exactly what the John Lewis Voting Rights Act does. What I will tell you is that the narrative surrounding it is bullshit. I mean, this is not some fight against Jim Crow. We're not living under Jim Crow like they're trying to say we are. People can vote. And even with these voting laws, which again, I have a problem with some of these laws, but the problems that I have nothing to do with it discriminating against Black people, because if you read the bill, it very clearly does not. If it's going to suppress votes, it's not going to suppress just Black votes. It's going to suppress everybody. But realistically, I don't see anything in there that's going to prevent people from actually voting. But again, this is the narrative that the Democrats need to push in order to get support. They know that the merit of their argument is flawed because they know that if anybody actually reads the bill, it doesn't bear out what they're saying. So they have to use Black trauma, the Jim Crow era, to push their agenda, which is basically the federal government having more control over elections. It's goofy. The states should have control over that. I mean, what happens when Republicans are in power and they want to change things? I mean, it's just it's a bad idea from the get-go. But the John Lewis in particular is one that I wanted to look more into. So I will be talking more about that. Omega variant, I do not understand why we are working on a deadline in the first place. That's a good question. I mean, people have criticized. I mean, this has been an argument that's been going on since the war started. Like, you don't want to give them an exact date as to when you're going to leave. I don't have that much of a problem with it. I mean, because if it's done the right way, then it doesn't matter if we have a deadline. But the problem is that we're not doing this the right way. Let's see what else we got here. Where'd it go? Okay, there we go. The Iranian hostage crisis lasted 444 days, well over a year. Yeah, you're right. I really hope this isn't leading to something like that. I really hope not. And I really hope that the Taliban doesn't do anything that's going to make us want to invade again. I just, there are so many different ways that this could go, right? And I'm not very optimistic. I'll tell you that. I'm trying to be, but it's very hard to be optimistic. I'm afraid the recent phrasing of Biden et al. Insinuates those that do not make it out are those who do not want to leave. That's a good observation. I noticed that he said that as well. I was like, well, how many people are there who don't want to leave? Maybe some people, but I could see them framing it that way. Like if Americans are getting killed or captured, they're going to go with, oh, well, they didn't want to leave. I could see them pushing that narrative when it's not true. Let's see. This thing keeps skipping around. Okay. What do you think Trump would have done differently, if anything? That's a good question. I don't know. It's very hard to predict what he would do. I mean, he definitely wanted to get out, and he was trying. He drew down our troops. I mean, when he took office, we had 15,000 there. By the time he left, we had 2,500. I think it probably would have been more orderly under Trump, but that doesn't mean that he wouldn't have made mistakes too. I just don't know what mistakes he would have made. But I do think that we would have been focused on getting our people out first, and then also our Afghan allies. As much as they say that he doesn't like refugees from those countries, under his administration, a ton of them were given visas to come over. So I think he would have continued with that. But as far as any mistake, because I mean, any president who handles a situation like this is going to make mistakes. I expect mistakes to be made. Biden's mistakes were too egregious for me. I'm sorry. Like if there had been a little something here or there, or something didn't go right or whatever, I'd be defending him. And if it gets worse, I can't defend him. The way this is handled is horrible, or the way we are leaving our allies high and dry is not good. But again, Trump did do that in Syria with the Kurds, right? So it's not the exact same situation. It's not as bad as what's going on now, but it's very possible that Trump might have made this mistake too. So who knows? Let's see. I so appreciate the fairness of your analysis and being able to confidently send people here. Thank you. My husband watched your other Afghanistan live. It helped him understand a lot of the nuances he didn't know before. Good. That's what I'm here for. That makes me smile. Hey, Jeff, do you think Biden withdrew from Afghanistan to get a political win and was just completely caught off guard? You know, I would say yes to that, but to be fair to Biden, he's been calling for this for years. He's wanted to get out of Biden. He wanted to get out of. Sorry, I had a Biden moment there. No, Biden has wanted to get out of Afghanistan for years. He's complained about this war since he was a senator. So I don't think he's just doing this to get a win, although he does need one right now. And I do think he was caught off guard, mainly because he didn't listen to people who were telling him what was going on. But yeah, I'm going to be fair to him. I think he did it because he really believes that we need to be out of Afghanistan. Maybe I'm being too charitable to him. I don't think so. The Fletch. What's going on, brother? I don't care if Biden got us out or not. He botched it so bad it nullified the purpose. We are going to be right back in. And I wish I could say you're wrong, but I can't definitively say that. I can't definitively say that because that could very well happen. And I really, really hope. I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong because imagine how bad it would be that we've wanted to get out of Afghanistan for over at least over a decade, if not longer. And then we end up having to invade again. Whew! I mean, the prospects for the Democrats winning in 2022 and 2024 are already bad. This would just be beating that dead horse. What are the most fallible talking points, responses y'all have seen from Conservative Inc. on this topic? Oh, man, you guys are coming up with the good questions. You know, Conservative Inc. has not been all that bad on this. I mean, there are some of the neocon types who thinks we should have never left in the first place. Other than that, I'm not really seeing much. I think that their responses have been warranted. I think in some areas they're a little bit too hard on Biden, but not in too many. Especially at this point, a lot of that criticism is warranted. But in some areas, like when he gave his first speech, and he, like I said earlier, he talked about the Afghan army and the other stuff. I think that they were harder on him on that speech than I would have been. I thought the speech was mostly fine. This second one, not so much. And the thing is, you knew that he knew that what he was going to say was going to piss people off because he didn't even start by talking about Afghanistan. He was talking about the Rescue Act, the coronavirus bill. Who the hell is talking about that right now? It's like when you were a kid and you have to like admit to your mom that you did something bad, or like maybe you got some bad grades and you try to talk about something else first to kind of stall. That's what he was doing. Because at the end of the day, you still get that ass whooping, so there's really no need to stall. Let's see. Oh, this is a good point. The Fletch. Trump would have made the Taliban nervous enough not to act so fast. Biden was weak and they knew it. That is actually, thank you for reminding me of that because I wanted to talk about that. Yeah, if Trump were in charge, he definitely wouldn't be giving in to the Taliban like he did. Now, people have criticized him for making the deal in the first place. Making a deal isn't the same thing as letting the Taliban tell you what to do, right? I think if Trump had been in charge, we would have had those drone strikes on the Taliban once we started realizing that they were going to take over the country. We would have slowed that process down. Biden could have done that. When I interviewed Dave Patterson last week, he essentially said the same thing. Like when we started seeing that the Taliban was starting to get more territory and seize more power, we could have put a stop to that, or at least slowed it down enough to where we can buy ourselves enough time to get everybody out there. And we could have done it without putting people at risk. We could have, the drone technology that we have now is such that we can be more precise in how we target them. Biden didn't want to take any action. And yeah, Biden did project weakness. There's no way around that. There's no way around that. He tries to project strength, but he can't. He's not doing it. It is. Okay, well, that's what I have to say about that. Okay, I've seen some propaganda towards more Middle Eastern refugees coming in. I've seen a little bit of that. You're right. I haven't seen a lot. Maybe you've seen a lot, but I haven't seen a whole lot of it. People are mad that we're taking in refugees. Look, I mean, we caused a lot of this to happen, so I have no problem if we take refugees, especially if they helped us, especially if they put their lives on the line to help the U.S. military. The idea that, I mean, leaving them to die is immoral. I get that we can't take everybody. I'm not saying we should take everybody. We can't even if we wanted to. But at least the people who helped us, the idea that we wouldn't bring them over, that's immoral. That's abhorrent. Like you need Jesus. Like that's how that is bad. Thoughts on those who say we should have maintained a base in Afghanistan like we do in other countries? Is that just not possible there? If we stay, it means war. I've heard people talk about that too. And here's where I stand and where a lot of other people stand. We need to bring them all home. Why do we need to be in Germany? There's no Hitler there anymore. There's no Third Reich. we don't need to have troops there. Like I get that it provides an opportunity for our soldiers to travel and all that stuff. But why are we spending taxpayer money on that? Why do we still have troops in Japan? There's no need for that. They're not going to bomb Pearl Harbor again. Okay. There's no point. So I would say, no, we don't need to have it anywhere. We don't need to be spending money on that. And there are probably other programs that we can put in place to where, if soldiers want to travel or whatever. I really don't even know why we're still in some of these places. It makes no sense. We don't need to be there. I think we need to mind our business. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next topic here. But before I do not forget to head on over to libertynation.com. Proud sponsor of my show, A Fresh Perspective. Now, with Liberty Nation, you're like I've said before, you're going to get a lot. Like, you guys like the nuance that I bring. You guys like how I approach things. You're going to get that when you go to libertynation.com. Like, even if you just read the articles, again, you won't agree with everything, just like you don't agree with everything that I say. But you're going to get a nuanced take. It's not going to be the usual outrage porn. Like the stuff that we write at Liberty Nation isn't designed to make you angry. Although some of it might make you angry just as a result. Like this story makes me angry. But at Liberty Nation, you're going to get good stuff. And they also have a member zone that you can subscribe to get premium content, or you can get the daily briefing, which kind of gives you an update on the news each day in your email. But I would highly encourage you to go over to that site because you'll get a more refreshing take. Doesn't mean that you won't still watch your Fox News and read your other stuff like Red State, Daily Wire, but it'll give you a fresh perspective. See what I did there? But yeah, definitely check out Liberty Nation. There's a reason why I love writing for that site. Not just because it gave me my start, it's because it is responsible for shaping the way I approach a lot of issues. So last thing I want to talk about are these school mask mandates. It looks like those who are promoting them have run into a bit of a snag. Will it matter? Well, it may, but it won't matter right now. I think that people are still kind of resigned to this, but there are still people fighting against them. All right. Now, it turns out that what the left is saying about mask mandates in classrooms might be leaving some stuff out. Now, what do I always say about how the media lies to us, or about how the chattering class, how they lie to us? What do I always say? 9 times out of 10, they're not lying by commission, they're lying by omission, which means that they're not lying by making things up, like fabricating information. What they do is they lie by leaving out information that might contradict what they want you to believe, right? That's what's happening here. And I wrote about this. And the left is harping on mask mandates. They want every child wearing a mask. And they insist that this will slow the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Delta variant and all that good stuff. But now there are more and more people on the left who are questioning this. Now, there was a piece that was published by a healthcare journalist, or a health journalist named David Zweig, and he wrote it for a New York magazine. New York magazine. No, not Breitbart, not Fox News, not the Daily Wire, not Red State, not the National Review, New York magazine, which is about as left-wing as it gets. And in the piece, he points out how the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, may not be all that honest. And the way that other media outlets are reporting on the study that they did regarding mask wearing and other, measures to deal with the pandemic aren't quite, they're not quite telling you the whole truth. So here's what he says. He first, in his article, he says, quote, a few major news outlets. Okay, wait, no, let me back up. So the article centers on a study, a very big study where they analyzed, I believe, 90,000 students in schools all across the country. And it basically measured how certain tactics that these schools are using to stop the spread of the virus are working. Some of them include having the teachers wear masks. Some of them include improving the ventilation in classrooms and other measures, and having students wearing masks was part of that study. So it's a huge. This. I think this is probably the largest scale study conducted by the CDC, which focused on schools. If it's not the largest, it's one of the largest. And so he wrote, quote, a few major news outlets. Oh, excuse me. A few major news outlets covered its release by briefly reiterating the study's summary that masking then unvaccinated teachers and improving ventilation with more fresh air were associated with a lower incidence of the virus in schools. However, they left something out, like I said. He wrote, quote, distancing, hybrid models, classroom barriers, HEPA filters, and most notably requiring student masking were each found to not have a statistically significant benefit. In other words, these measures could not be said to be effective. So here's the thing: when they do the studies, when they do any study, they'll have the text of the study. You can read through it. Sometimes it's a million pages long, sometimes it's shorter, but they also always have a summary that you can read if you don't have time to read the whole study. So in this particular study, they released the summary, and that's usually what people like myself will report on. But in that summary, it didn't include the fact that this study found that these measures, especially masking the students, did not have a statistically significant benefit when it comes to slowing the spread of the coronavirus. Now, again, I'm only talking about students, children. This doesn't necessarily apply to mask wearing among adults. There have been studies that have shown that that's beneficial. And yes, I know, oh, but Jeff, wait, no, there are some studies that show that masking doesn't work among adults. I know, I get it. I haven't looked at those studies. I'm a little bit iffy. I'm not convinced that masking doesn't provide some benefit. But when it comes to children, and this may be counterintuitive, right? Because why would it be different for children? Children's bodies aren't quite the same as adults. Children, if you've been following this from the beginning, you know that children are less likely to experience serious symptoms than adults, and especially the elderly. This doesn't mean that children haven't gotten the coronavirus. It doesn't mean that they haven't gotten sick, that it's been happening, but it's less lethal among children than it is among adults. So the author of the study, again, they talk about, because here's the other thing with the way they did this study. They only looked at classrooms that required masking, that required students to wear masks. That's all they looked at. They didn't look at classrooms where masking was not a requirement for students. So there was no control group. There was nothing to compare it to. But when you look at European nations like the United Kingdom, Italy, France, Ireland, these nations don't require children to wear face masks. They have different age cutoffs, but smaller children are not required to wear them. And the article states that, quote, there's no evidence of more outbreaks in schools in those countries relative to schools in the United States. And what's even more interesting, the World Health Organization, the who are you? All right. The World Health Organization, and I know how we feel about the World Health Organization, but here's what's interesting. The guidance that they provided when it comes to mask wearing among students actually conflicts with the CDC's recommendations. The World Health Organization found that forcing students to wear masks might actually have a negative or detrimental impact on their development. The author of this article that I'm quoting from, he spoke with multiple scientists, medical professionals, talked to a ton of different people to get more insight on this. And he asked them, why would they leave this out of the summary? And the answers that he says he got back, they indicated that the exclusion of that data was part of a practice that's known as file drawing. It's a colloquial phrase, I guess, in that community. And file drawing, when I say drawing, I mean like a drawer, like they're putting it in a file drawer. It occurs when researchers bury information that does not, quote, produce statistically significant results. So they'll bury the information because it didn't really have any significant results. Vinay Prasad, an associate professor at the University of California, San Francisco, the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, he explained to the author that the failure to demonstrate the effectiveness of masks is, quote, a finding of consequence and great interest. And he argued that that information should have been included in the summary. Now, the author also wrote, he said, quote, over the course of several weeks, I also corresponded with many experts, epidemiologists, infectious disease specialists, an immunologist, pediatricians, and a physician publicly active in matters relating to COVID, asking for the best evidence they were aware of that mask requirements on students were effective. He says nobody was able to find a data set as robust as the study that I just brought up. And again, what Zweig says, the author, he says the issue with the data that these people provided for him only measured the spread of the virus among children who were wearing masks in classrooms. Again, there was no control group analyzing the spread among children who were not wearing masks. Therefore, these studies, there's no way these particular studies that they sent him could definitively show how the differences between how the virus might spread among a group of students who aren't wearing masks versus the ones who are. Now, when it comes to the harm that the masking can do, and I'm not saying that this is like a huge traumatic issue, like they're going to grow up and become serial killers or anything like that, but it does have a negative impact. So Lloyd Fisher, the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, he said that, quote, it is important for children to see facial expressions of their peers and the adults around them in order to learn social cues and understand how to read emotions. There was another article that was written by different authors, Professors Niraj Sood and Professor J, I'm going to jack up his last name, Bhattacharya. And, you know, these people know what they're talking about. And they wrote an article for the OC Register. And they wrote, quote, the benefits of masks in preventing serious illness or death from COVID-19 among children are infinitesimally small. At the same time, they are disruptive to learning and communicating in classrooms. They may be partially effective in shielding adults from COVID. But since when is it ethical to burden children for the benefit of adults? Among children, the survival rate when they catch COVID is 99.99%. That's higher than adults. Adults, I think it's like 98%, something like that. But this begs a question. First off, why did they leave it out? And why are the Democrats still lying about this? Why are they still saying that having children wearing masks is going to keep them safer? Now, I will grant that most of the people saying these things don't know any better. I'm sure not everybody reads these studies. Not everybody reads the reports on these studies. They should at least read the reports on the studies, but they don't. So I get it to a certain degree. But the left-wing media and Democratic politicians, why are they not telling the truth about this? I'm still trying to figure this out because I don't see what they gain from this, right? I mean, are they in league with the people who manufacture the masks so they get a kickback? I mean, that's not what's happening here. But I'm trying to figure out if the CDC study found that there was no statistical benefit, why would they push for this so much? Why is the CDC pushing for this when the World Health Organization doesn't even go this far? Who would benefit from this? Key bono, who benefits? I don't get it. Maybe you guys know the answer. Let me know what your theories are. Why would they lie about this when they don't need to? Again, with adults, it's different. There's an argument to be made that masking helps adults. But with students, with kids, it doesn't. And this is not the only CDC study to find that, especially last year when the vaccine wasn't a thing yet. They found that schools are not super spreaders for COVID. So what's going on here? Why would they lie about this? Why would they leave this information out? I'm still trying to figure it out. Oh, you guys are still talking about Afghanistan. Let's see. It's an interesting point. People's position on COVID and masking is strongly influenced by how many people died of COVID around them. I can understand that. And like I said, it's not like these people are, not everybody's going to read these studies. I mean, we just won't. So I get that not everybody is deliberately lying, but some of these people are some damn liars. And I want to know why. I want to know why. Omega variant. The masks on kids stuff drives me crazy. I don't want to hear a word about them following the science. I don't want to hear a word about them following the science anymore. But I am against governors banning mask bans in schools. Yeah, that's exactly where I stand. I think that should be decided by the local community. I'm not a fan of Ron DeSantis doing this at the state level, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but whoever. I'm not a fan of this at the state level. Let the local communities decide what they want to do. Or even better yet, there was a governor who had put a ban in place, but then he also said he put something in place that would allow a parent to take their kids to a different school if they don't want to mask up. That I agree with, because that gives people more freedom. But just saying, no, you can't, ban, you can't have mask mandates. That I'm not a fan of that. What else we got here? I just hallucinated him singing, right? No, that really happened. You keep messing with me, I'll sing more. Yeah, now y'all know I got a new guitar, right? Yeah. I'm still learning banjo. I haven't given that up, but the thing about banjo is that I'm not good enough at it yet to really be able to, use it as an outlet. It's fun to practice it, and I'm learning. But with the guitar, I already know how to play guitar. I'm rusty. I'm very rusty. But once I get my chops back up, it's going to be on like Chaka Khan, all right? I might be singing a little bit, and you're not going to like it, but you're going to have to listen. I thought it was Pete Townsend for a minute. No, it's Roger Daltrey. He's the one that sings. I'm sure Pete Townsend sang backup, though, didn't he? Yeah, whatever. Let's see. Bargaining tool for teachers unions. How so? I'm intrigued. While I my theory, teachers who may or may not want to vaccinate are afraid. The only thing I could really come up with is something along those lines. Maybe this is just to make people feel good and make them feel safe, even though it's not going to make them safer. Maybe they're lying because they think it'll make parents more comfortable with sending their kids back to school in person. That could be it. That's a little too nice for me. I think that this is probably more insidious than that. Because conservatives are against masking, and that means that masking is good for whatever my enemy is against, I'm in favor of. Well, it's usually us who are the reactionaries, right? It's usually conservatives who are the reactionaries. But you never know. That could be it. They could see people with MAGA hats on saying, I'm not with masking. So they're like, oh, no, we definitely need to mask up now. It's possible. Yeah, the governor of Arizona. What's that guy's name? Is it Ducey? No, I think that's something else. Anyway, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, Greg Abbott banned. Yeah, Greg Abbott did ban masks in schools. El Paso School District sued and won for 30 days. Is that because the judge, I think the judge put a stay on it? Something like that? But yeah, our governor did that too. A lot of people in Texas, a lot of Republicans in Texas aren't big fans of Greg Abbott. I could see why on some things. I mean, there's some things that he does that I like, but maybe I'll do another show on that. Yeah, it was Ducey. Okay, so I wasn't losing my mind. Yeah, it was Doug Ducey. Yeah, so that's where we're at. So I'll probably be talking about this more as time goes on, but I'm going to sign off because I've got to figure out dinner. I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner yet. I eat late for some reason. But yeah, if you have any suggestions, hit me up on Twitter. I don't feel like cooking tonight, so I'm going to order. But thank you for showing up. Again, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And until next time, keep your minds free.